For storyboarding, these are all the original storyboards. This is like the day I started working on it, which is very funny because it's January 19th and it released on June 19th, which was an exact 6 months of work. And it was a lot of work too. This is just all of the shots I did, and if you don't know what storyboarding is, it's basically just like the main idea of what you want your film to look like, and it's just like blocking out all the stuff you want to happen. This is red guy going, "So, do you feel any different?" And then this is yellow guy with all the stuff in the background, and it goes on with page 2, and there's some stuff that I changed. One of the things that I changed was this was supposed to be Roy like letting go of yellow guy's overalls and stuff, and I changed it to just the hands, and just his hand and the straps of the overall. A couple other shots I changed was this one. I changed this to when Leslie her face was like away from the camera. And this this whole sequence, I changed it a little bit to where it was supposed to, he saw the book, and I basically like got rid of this frame and I replaced it with this one. And another thing is that Leslie was supposed to be in the background when yellow guy was in like the space world, which is what I like to call that like little setting. With all the editing and the animation, it would be like really hard for me to do it, so I decided to cut Leslie out and just have yellow guy in space world. Page 3 is very simple. I really didn't change that much other than this one shot right here where yellow guy is like clutching like his hair. I was gonna have Sketchbook and Tony and like Warren over here, just like all of like his past stuff like flashing in the background, but I decided to cut that out because this was when I was getting really close to the deadline, and I wanted it to just like be done by then. So I added this little part in the corner where this is just like basic stuff I want for production reasons. So I wanted the frame per second to be 16 frames per second most of the time, and then 18 frames per second for a lot of complicated shots that needed time to move around and stuff. How I study animation, other than just looking at animation, just like watching like an animated movie and stuff, is I have this book. And I don't necessarily know where it is right now. It's probably on the floor somewhere. Is the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. If you are into animation and you really want to get better at it, I heavily suggest investing in that book. It is such a good tool to use. It's literally called the Animation Bible. It's literally nicknamed that. So, the only other note that I have in this area is simplify Leslie's outfit as much as possible. And the reason I did that, which I will explain very soon, is her coat has so much design on it and so much stuff going on that I wanted to simplify her design so it would be easier to animate. And this is basically part 1 of the pre-production phase of getting everything ready to start production. And these are my storyboards, so yeah. The second part of pre-production, which I really like explaining, is my designs, which I really like getting into because a lot of design went into this entire thing. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Roy, because he is by far the most I changed out of every single character. Roy, I made him a lot more menacing than I usually draw him, especially before I drew this entire like concept of him. Before, I drew him just like how he was in the show, like buck teeth, like his really like oval eyes. He looks kind of stupid. He has like the creases, his ears, and like he just has like strings and stuff. And I really wanted to make him look more menacing and more scary. And so like the week before, okay, I want to actually make this into an animation, I Sharpie drew Roy, and I ended up sketching this with Sharpie. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I really liked how like his eye kind of looks like this. I don't know how exactly to explain it, but I really love how his eye turned out. I really like how his nose goes to like the side and everything. Made his hair more like thick. I made it more like a noodle. And I gave him more sharp teeth than like his buck teeth that he has in the show. With Leslie, the only other thing I really changed about her is her eyes and her entire outfit. With Leslie's eyes, I originally gave her this mean kind of look to her. And I didn't really even notice I did that until I edited her. Instead, I gave her this laid back kind of chill look to her. And it makes her look a lot more like she does in the show. There's like more of like a sense of like creepiness, more like wondering of who is this character, why is she here? And I wanted to give her that kind of vibe. So I made her face very, very mysterious in a way with the way I drew her eyes. And then with her outfit, I changed it from her original jacket to this more simplified design, which is the undershirt she has with the clouds and everything. And I showed off her pants a lot more, and I really simplified the pants too, because there was a lot going on in her pants as well, that it would be way too hard to animate that too. The other character in this like little reference sheet I made was Yellow Guy. He was very easy to draw. He's Yellow Guy. He's quite easy for me to like figure out. I just used his normal design that I used, and I made sure to really pay attention to adding his watch. And then we have Duck. Duck was really easy to figure out. I just drew how I normally drew Duck. One of the things I really like talking about is key detailing, and the hands were very fun to like figure out because I really wanted to do something with their hands, or like a detail of something, so I chose their hands. And with Yellow Guy, I made his hands little and chubby. I gave him 4 fingers because that's what his puppet has. With Leslie, I actually drew a 5-finger hand, which I don't necessarily do, and I entirely blame my Cuphead face for that. I made her hands more thick because she has gloves on, but I still wanted to give her like the gentleness and like the weird vibe that she already has with it, so I made her hands really gentle to like move around. With Roy, I gave him the 4 fingers because he's a puppet and that's what his puppet has, and I made his hands way like thin, long, and pointy because it adds to like the creepiness and weirdness of his character already. Roy's hand was especially like important for me to get right because there's a shot of him where it's just his hand reaching towards Yellow Guy. Like, this is also part of kind of like production and pre-production at the exact same time. It's kind of in the middle of that, is using references for a lot of things. These are my 2 18 frame per second shots that I did. My Leslie shot, I used a reference from Encanto. I used the scene from We Don't Talk About Bruno, and I used the scene where Camilo catches Mirabelle and just swoops her off to the side, and she just keeps going. A lot of the animators record themselves pretending like acting out what the characters are doing, and then using that as a reference for their animation. And I absolutely love that. I've seen that with a lot of Disney animators. I've seen that with Faith the Unholy Trinity. And so I really wanted to do that, and this was a perfect scene to do it with, because Leslie was doing so much, and I knew what her movements were in my head, but I didn't know how like they looked visually in front of me. And another thing I do, especially with blocking out stuff, is that I draw the shot like this, and then I lay it out later in Procreate. And it was kind of hard to do his laugh cycle beforehand. I had to search up a lot of references of just characters laughing, and just videos of different cartoon characters laughing, and I used the animator survival kit. I'll get into that later, but I used a lot of different like resources to help me figure out how to make a laugh cycle, because I am very, very bad at doing that. This is all just me laying out everything. So this is the shot of when Roy wraps his arm around Yellow Guy, and I really like this shot because it shows how much rubber hose I really wanted Roy to have with his arms, because they stretch a lot in the original show, and I really wanted to just show that. And this was just, and this is an example of how I use Yellow Guy so much that there's so many smear frames of him that I have, and it's so good. It's so funny for me to just look back at. This is my big Leslie shot, and I really wanted it to look good, so I had to just have the animation setting on my Procreate so I could just see it over and over and over. And this is what I used for my basic like animation posing for like all the keyframes and stuff, and then I added like more like in-betweens. I think if I just 1, 2, 3, 4 go to like this end pose, you can see her head goes down, it goes up, and then it goes back down, which is what I really wanted to pull off. And Yellow Guy over here, all of these frames just look exactly the same, where he goes down, goes up, and then settles because he got scared, and then he anticipates, and then he goes up, and then he settles back down again. So like the last shot I had to like lay out. I really like this entire like shot that I did here because I planned this out specifically in the storyboards too. So I drew this probably when I was first got into Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. You can tell that like I definitely changed a few things about like the anatomy and stuff, but it's still like it's almost the exact same, and I really wanted to add this specific pose to the animation because this is by far like one of my most proudest drawings. I actually have it printed and framed on my wall. And I'm so proud of this that I wanted to implement it into the Mind Electric because of how like memorable it is and how like I'm really proud of this like an original drawing. I'm so proud of it. Yeah, I really wanted to add it. So now we're getting into the production, which is actually animating everything. This is the time lapse of the Leslie shot. This is the shot that took the most amount of time to do. Mostly because there's so much going on, there's so many objects to draw in, there's 2 characters in it, and one of my rules is that if there's more characters than one, it takes more time to do. This shot was also in 18 frames per second, which took longer because there was more frames to work with. And the coloring process took longer too, mostly because there was so much stuff going on with Leslie's whole outfit. It took so long to do Leslie, and with Yellow Guy too, there was just so much to color in, and so this shot is a really good example on how I rough animate everything. The faded animation in the background is the Procreate layout I did, and on top of that, I rough animated every in-between and everything I needed to do for this shot. And then we go into cleanup, which is easy but time consuming, and it just takes a lot of the time to get all of the line weight all done. And sometimes I skip the in-betweens in the rough animation entirely and then just do all the in-betweens when I do the cleanup, so it's a lot more faster. Animating takes a lot of time to do, so especially this is like one of the longest shots I had to animate because of how long this clip was and also of how much is happening, because there's 2 characters at the exact same time, and that just takes a lot more time to do than just one character being on screen. There's a lot of overlapping action with Roy's hair in this shot, and that took a lot more time to animate as well because there's so many stills in this shot that I had to go on a separate layer and animate all of his hair separately. And then I had to go back and reanimate his jaw because like his jaw moves a lot because he's lip-syncing with all the words, and I have to reanimate a lot of his jaw and erase a lot of stuff because he's just speaking so much, and it's just a lot to do. With the animation of his arm, I did it really rough because it was just so loose that I wanted it to feel really loose. And I had to, by hand, when I cleaned up everything, I had to redo all of his hair, and then I had to go over that again, and then in between all of his hair too. And the coloring took so long. The coloring for the shot took so long, oh my gosh. Animating is really, really difficult sometimes, and sometimes you can get really frustrated, but at the end of the day, you look back at what you've done, what you've accomplished, and it's worth it.
So, do you feel any different?
Spiraling down thy majesty, I beg of thee, have mercy on me. I was just a boy, you see, I plead of thee, have sympathy for me.